Welcome to the Scalable Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we discuss the most scalable strategies, tools, and approaches to successfully invest in real estate. Learn how to make the most impact of your time, automate your real estate investing business, find off-market deals with minimum time invested, and leverage your capital to create as many income streams as possible so that you can achieve true financial independence. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Mason Clement. Hi everyone, Mason Clement here. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to ask you one question. Are you sick of the wild swings in the stock market and ready to try something different? Did you know that investing in stocks actually put you at the very bottom of a company's capital structure, meaning that there's practically 0% chance that you're going to get any of your money back in the event that the company files bankruptcy? That basically you're putting yourself in the riskiest position for a questionable return. Personally, I hate the unpredictability and just waking up and having half of my investment gone when I didn't do anything wrong. So what a lot of people don't know is that you can actually make higher returns on a consistent basis by investing in the opposite end of the capital structure, which is actually the safest place to be, which is on the debt side in a first lien position. And you can do that by investing in real estate, and specifically investing with my company in notes that are backed by the land that we purchase. So if you're ready to diversify your income stream, go ahead and go over to scalablerei.com and click on invest in the top right corner. There you're going to find a form that you can fill out to determine if you're eligible to invest with my company, Celion Capital, and we'll be reaching out to you to schedule an introductory call and speak more from there. So thanks a lot, and let's jump into the episode. Hi, Scalable Investors. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Scalable Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Mason Clement, and today we have with us TJ Kosen, who is the founder of Sherlock Homes and the Platinum Real Estate Mastermind group. He has a wealth of experience, been involved in the space since 2006. So without stealing his thunder too much, let's jump into things. TJ, how you doing?
Awesome. I'm doing fantastic, Mason. Thanks for having me on the call. I appreciate it.
Sure. No problem. So apologize, listeners, if there's any background noise. TJ is in the airport right now. This was kind of on the fly, funny recording area.
I apologize for that too, but
it's all good. I just hear a little background noise too, but I think it'll be good. I think we'll make this work. So we'll just jump into stuff. So in case folks aren't familiar with you, I just like to ask guests to talk about their background and what got them into real estate and brought them to today.
Yeah, sure. So started off in real estate in 2006. Actually bought my first property off of Craigslist, which is of all the crazy things. I don't think that really probably is a thing anymore. And the first one was 112 units. It was a lot of fun. Big rehab project, about 10% occupied when we bought it. And then at the height, we got it up to about 90 something percent economic occupancy. And the only problem with buying shit in 2006 is you don't really know that 2008's around the corner. So that was a fun way to kind of get going. But obviously fell in love with the business and been doing it ever since. Right now, our primary business is wholesales, wholetails, flips, and some commercial that kind of comes our way. We focus primarily in the North Texas area for like longer term things, like if we're going to get into flip or something like that. But we do marketing. Our primary marketing channel is PPC. So we do marketing in several other kind of metro areas that treat us pretty well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
so that's the short intro.
All right, that's very short, but I think though you originally are from California, is that right?
Yeah, I'm from San Diego. Born and raised there. Let's see, 06, bought the stuff in actually Memphis, Tennessee. So that was the first time I left. And then my wife and I got married, moved to Texas, and started business out here, I guess 8.5 years ago, almost. I think our first deal in Dallas was 8.5 years ago. So it's been a fun journey for sure.
Okay. And why Texas? Is your wife from there, or what was the deal?
It's funny. She actually is technically born in Dallas, but she grew up about 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from me in San Diego. We didn't meet until after college, but we went to the same college, know a lot of the same folks. So it's pretty cool thing. Yeah, kind of by accident, she happened to be born in Dallas because her mom's husband was stationed out here at the time. So yeah, technically, if Texas secedes, she's like got citizenship. And I'm one of the guys that's going to have to like fill out some paperwork or something.
All right. Yeah, everyone talks about that, but it's
not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, if Puerto Rico, for example, is trying to become part of the country, why would others want to leave? It's really like a silly thing I've heard all my life growing up in
Uh-huh.
Texas. Like, oh,
Yeah,
what's going to happen? We're the only ones got the right.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Interesting. That's cool though. So I guess one of y'all's jobs brought you over to Texas.
Yeah, more or less. So after the crash and kind of the recovery was doing a kind of a medium level of flips in like Southern California market. Did pretty well with it, but we didn't really have like a volume based mindset, and we just kind of got. I mean, it sounds kind of funny, I guess, but we got tired of the like kind of California, I don't know, prices, culture, all that. It's like, kind of bored. Let's move to Texas. If it's awesome, we'll stick around. If it sucks, we'll stick. Be there maybe a year and a half, and go back if we don't like it. Well, that's again 8 years ago, 8.5 years ago. So I just
Okay.
picked it. I had some friends in Dallas, and I don't know, we read articles and saw like, Plano, North Dallas area. I've been out here a couple times, but we saw articles and things that said, hey, it's a great place to live. You're a little younger, kind of want to have a lifestyle, and just decided, give it a shot. So we did.
Okay, nice. Well, I'm obviously biased because before we started recording, like I mentioned, I'm in Richardson, just down the road from you. But I moved over, although I grew up in Texas, I was in New York for like 6 years. So me and my wife had moved from New York, from Queens. So it
Okay.
definitely was a transition at first. The restaurant caliber is not quite the same down here, but it's all
Dude,
good. It's worth it.
to be honest, that took some getting used to, because like all the cheap food in San Diego is amazing, and the cheap food in Dallas I don't think is maybe as good. But if you go like a notch up, it's not, it's all right. But you definitely got to hunt for it more than you had to back at home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we found a few places where it's like, this is impressive. This kind of feels like New York, but other times, like especially around Richardson, just in a suburb, it's like, I gotta get the chefs. I gotta get whatever his name is, that chef over there from New York, fly down here, tell him how to do it because they're
Yeah,
messing up stuff in the kitchen.
I completely agree. You gotta look for the food out here more than you have to back in like New York or San Diego for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get back into the business. That's interesting. You say PPC. I had a couple other guests on the show that's all they do as well. Or like probably 90% or more of their marketing for houses. So you don't do any SMS campaigns or cold calls or anything else? Mailers?
So we've done mailers off and on, and we're ramping up another like really targeted mail campaign. PPC is probably right now it's probably 50% of our business. Referrals are probably about 25 to 30% because we do have such a strong presence in North Texas, and then the rest is kind of residual. So we did a lot of cold calling. We spent probably 120 grand last year on cold calling and texting. Paid off really well. But when texting changes got just kind of a pain in the butt to keep up with, it was, I wouldn't say it's the lowest performer, but it's definitely the most headache and like hassle for us. So we scaled it back in November, December, and then really haven't done it this year. We're probably going to pick it up a little bit, but we're going to do a little more targeted. So we did the mass thing. We just called crap out of everyone, and we just didn't like that as much as the inbound leads. So we prefer the PPC. In my experience, it's got scalability issues in one market where it's difficult to scale effectively. But when you add kind of a multiple market perspective on it, then you're able to definitely dial up your spending and be pretty effective with the strategy in general.
Okay. Yeah, I know when I was trying to do PPC in my business sort of into last year, I was doing like $50 per day, just nationwide campaign. And I was just getting hit with like $500 bills every few days. And I was like, I just don't know if I'm doing this right. So what is the general parameters you set, like budget per day and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it depends. So maybe talk leads and like cost per deal is probably more effective. In one market, we find it's pretty easy to spend between 7 and 12K and still not have diminishing returns if you're in a market maybe the size of DFW. So that's good. Out of that, we get our cost per lead or our cost per CPA. So our click through to the website. It really ranges, which is annoying, but that's just the nature of the beast. It ranges between, I think, 35-ish bucks, maybe $25 on the low end, to up to $75 on the higher end. Right now, our average cost per lead is about $260, which is actually I'll be honest, it's really good, especially in a metro area like DFW. Our cost per contract it's going to vary really, really a lot depending on how people have their geographic stuff like targeted. And then obviously like any sales thing is going to matter a lot depending on who's doing the acquisitions and how good they are with the process. So our cost per contract right now is about $5,000, and that's been as low as $1,500 per contract. When we've been maybe like really dialed in or really a little bit lucky, it's been as high as like $8,000 per contract earlier in this year when stuff was a little bit slower and we weren't probably converting as well in houses as we are currently. And so it fluctuates. That's the obnoxious thing about just the nature of the beast. But again, it treats us well.
Okay, so if I was to ramp up that, I just generally speaking, I know that it's cheaper usually if you do really broad, like nationwide, but obviously you may not want all those different results. And it sounds like your campaigns are targeting like specific markets, and so you feel like it's not really an obstacle. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? For if you just or laser do you think it's like a better way to do it actually?
It depends. It really depends. The way we control our costs the most in terms of like getting quality leads is definitely having a solid negative keyword list that we go through every couple of weeks and add stuff depending on the search terms. Crazy stuff changes, which is obnoxious. We'll have targeted search terms on competitors like the big guys, Open Door and Redfin and stuff or whatever, and that'll convert really well for maybe 6 months. And then we'll look at those keywords, every so often, and then the conversion rate will just drop off and the cost will go like sky high. So it's really something that just has marginal tweaks all the time. The negative keywords, like for the broad stuff, is huge. Kind of a glitch with PPC is the more targeted we find. So if we target just like one area in somewhere like Dallas, so if we target like just Garland or just Arlington, maybe we'd have a really high CPA and a really high conversion rate because there's not so much traffic there. So when we open it up a little bit and target a broader geographic area, even in our primary campaign, the old school thinking was you set up different campaigns at different spots and then tweak them all. What seems to work well is you set up one primary campaign and then add a geographic target over different spots. So for example, right now in DFW, we target obviously the entire Metroplex, but we also add on some of the smaller cities. So we'll add on like a Weatherford, a Granbury, a Waco, all in the same campaign. And what that does for us anyway, it seems to aggregate traffic over multiple like traffic sources, multiple search areas or whatever. And it keeps the cost low, but it's still by having the campaign dialed in with the keyword stuff, it keeps the quality relatively consistent. And kind of monologuing, I guess. But at the same time, if you're doing a multiple state or multiple market campaign, the same kind of thing applies, where if you're really trying to dial in one market, you have to know the specifics that really work well in that market. And it's really tough to isolate versus if you're maybe over a lot of geographic areas. So you pick a bunch of like decent sized towns. I don't know. San Diego, that's kind of high price, but like, okay, Dallas, Houston, a couple towns in Florida, maybe a couple of Rust Belt spots, and just target each one of them. You can keep the lead cost down and keep your like deal cost down. Now, obviously, got logistics of trying to wholesale in multiple markets or whatever, but that's just the nature of the game.
Okay, and obviously, if you're doing things at scale, it's a pretty big budget. But just like a minimum starting budget, what do you think an investor would need to have just to expect to spend?
Yeah, you probably ought to give it 2 months worth of runway with a good campaign, and you probably ought to spend, depending on who you're paying for management or whatever, $3,500, $4,000, somewhere in there. And if you're dialed in, that'll get you a deal if you're pretty well dialed in. If you're doing a national based thing, it should get you 7,000. It should get you maybe 2.5 deals somewhere in there. It'll definitely get you enough traffic to know if your campaign is performing the way it should be. And again, that's always a big variable, is depending on how you have it set up or depending on how you have someone manage it. It's going to be a huge variability in the quality of the lead flow and the consistency too, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that was one thing I was taught, was that you shouldn't hire someone else to manage it, because that's like one of the most important things in your business is like those leads. So would you agree with that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot of the guys that teach the PPC mastermind stuff say that, and there's nothing against them. I think they're good people, and some of them are friends of mine. Uh, I don't know. I like hiring someone that's professional at that and letting them do it. I'm very hands-on with it, so we're very much like in the day-to-day, knowing what leads are coming in, what the search terms are, and making incremental tweaks to it. But yeah, I'm technically a marketing sales kind of guy, I guess, but I'm not a PPC specialist. So I'd rather hire someone who's a specialist in that field. That being said, you hire the wrong guy, and spend 20 grand and not make any money. So I understand there's a balance to it. But for me, I like outsourcing it personally.
Okay. Yeah, I would assume like getting word of mouth referrals or something just to vet them would probably be a good start.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge for sure. Word of mouth is huge, and we're not opposed to doing that when in our private group and stuff. The only caveat is I say our campaign has a lot of age behind it because we've been doing it for 4 years in one market, so we're able to make tweaks that make sense for paying with our same manager. You're likely to have different results because you're going to have different input on the front end. So it really is, it's unfortunate to say, but it really is an individualized lead source in order to get it to really work well, which is, honestly too bad. Everyone wants to just have the easy button, but I haven't found the easy button yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you're getting a lead in, obviously you have different tools in your tool belts, whether it's I could wholesale this or I could wholetail it or whatever. So how do you kind of determine which direction to go on each property?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely, so from the business perspective, we definitely take have the marketing and have the origination dialed in where it's consistent, where we're trying to get a consistent lead flow. But on the dispo side, we definitely take it as a deal first perspective with the property itself. So, for example, we'll look at the fundamentals of what's involved in the particular deal, what the issues are with the seller, what the problems are with the house or whatever, and then we'll build the exit strategy around that. And obviously, it has to work for us. It has to be not risky and make money and make sense. But then we'll take a look at what are the options for this house, depending on what it is. Is it a wholesale house? Well, if it's a wholesale house, then it's probably pretty much anything else downline from a wholesale. Is it a flip house because we like the area? Then maybe we do that. And then at the tail end, we look at our just business like objective and where we are. So if we're low on capital, maybe it's a wholesale more urgently than it would be a flip or a wholetail. And it just really depends. For example, in the past month, we did we offered seller finance. We closed simultaneously with the seller, offered seller financing to an end buyer that brought 13 grand cash to the table, and then simultaneously sold the note to an investor friend of ours that's getting a nice ROI on the note at the same time. And we got paid at closing. So it's basically a seller finance note wrap all at the same time. We did one of those in Corsicana, I think, which is a little, kind of small town south of here. And then we did another one that was kind of creative. We closed on a real shit box in Waco, cleaned it out, put it on the MLS. Didn't sell, I don't think I don't know if it was on the MLS. I don't remember. I didn't do it. But we sold that to a cash end buyer that just wanted to have the house. We bought the house for 38. We cleaned it out, put some new windows in. We were into it about 50, and we sold it for whatever 68 is or something like that. So it just depends on the deal. It depends a lot on the deal. We look at it, if we can buy it for wholesale price and make money wholesaling at it, then everything else makes sense. If we can't buy it at a wholesale price, it needs to be a really good deal for some other reason in order to justify closing on it or justify really even doing the deal.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's got to make sense at the most basic level first before getting more complicated. So, super beginner basic question, but because I feel like it kind of maybe varies. If I wanted to get into houses, what's the best way to really determine the repair cost without just hiring some contractor to walk in there and tell you?
Yeah, that's always tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You probably hit me up for like a spreadsheet of our general repair costs on things, and that's the easiest way because there's so much variability. Material is relatively straightforward. The way we manage our risk on our flips is we use contractors that we've used for quite a while, and they're pretty well vetted. But you always have turnover, you always have attrition. So on the second side, we'll almost always provide the materials ourselves because we get as good a price as anyone else is going to get. We do I don't know, several $1 million worth of renovations a year, so no one's going to get better pricing than us on the subcontractor level. And then we manage the labor cost and make sure. And backing up from that, we always control the scope of work. So we're not going to have a contractor come and dictate to us what needs to get done. There's nothing wrong with that, but that leaves a lot of ambiguity in comparing like scopes to like actual scope to actual scope. We'll come in and we'll say, hey, all this stuff needs to get done. If we need to sub it out, we obviously have an idea of what we ought to be paying, but then let's make sure that the contractor, the sub, understands what their piece of the thing is. So now we're comparing, piece to piece if we have to shop around a little bit. Because we're all, we test out new guys once in a while, but we definitely have our go-tos that we just like using.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important too, right? It's part of just building your team is having those contractors you can go to each time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And also, so for me, like I said, I focus on, before we started recording, we were talking about it, I focus on land, which is a lot easier to market when it's under contract. We haven't closed yet. But for houses, I've found it's a little more difficult and kind of awkward. So how do you usually work through that? Are you just like extremely blunt and saying, just going to list this on MLS and I'm marketing it and people are going to come through the house and that's it? Or how do you do it usually?
Yeah, it depends a lot on the seller. It depends a lot on their motivation. We close on a lot, so we bypass a lot of those issues. But when we wholesale or when we, list on the MLS or whatever we do, we definitely just set the expectation with the seller. And if there's a really urgent, weird, like kind of spazzy seller, maybe it doesn't work for them. But then maybe we compensate by buying it cheaper and just closing out ourselves. So we really try to take the seller's motivation into account. And if their motivation is, well, let's maximize money and timeline is not as important, then we'll say, well, let's work it this way. If their motivation is sort of a combination of both or ease, then it's a lot easier to have that conversation. And obviously, if the house is vacant, it makes it, it's a lot easier than if the house is occupied. So it really depends on seller's motivation. We always upfront with them, always telling them, hey, if we're going to close on it, we'll say, hey, we're going to close on it. You don't have to worry about it. We're not even going to come out here and look at it until like the lender needs to see it once and until the day before closing to make sure it doesn't burn the fuck down. And if we're going to wholesale it, we'll say, hey, yeah, no, we're going to get some investors in here that we've worked with or that we're going to pre-screen or whatever. And we're going to see if we can get you the price that you want. Because realistically, if we're not closing on it, there's maybe a reason why the house has some fundamental issues with it.
All right. That makes sense. Yeah, that's what I've said in the past too. So yeah, my financial partners need to just go check out the property, make sure it meets their criteria and checks the boxes and all that stuff.
Yeah, and if we have to renegotiate, we don't like doing it obviously because we like to be as upfront with folks as we can on the front end. But if we have to renegotiate, we'll tell them what the likelihood of like what we're going to find is. Like, you want to get Mr. Seller, you want to get such and such, you want to get $75K. I understand that. In fact, the one in Corsicana, I think Tony is sitting right over here, negotiated down almost 50%. But that's the market price on the thing. They wanted like 100, and we ended up giving them like 50 or 60. But we'll set the expectation. We'll be like, hey, the foundation's really jacked. And that's one thing that's really hard for us to figure out how much it's going to cost on a foundation. I mean, I'm usually pretty close, but it's tough to know for sure. So let's get a couple foundation estimates in here. And then we'll say, hey, the foundation retail price is $15,000, $10,000. And then even be upfront with them, say, hey, we'll get it done a little cheaper than that. But when you, go, if you want to shop our bid or whatever, you're going to be seeing numbers in this range. And that's why we have to justify the sales price, because we're going to have to come in here and you haven't done shit to this house for 20 years. Well, we're going to have to cover your ass by doing all the stuff that you've been neglecting for the past however long.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful to understand. So on each deal, if you're not wholesaling it, then what's like a typical budget or amount of capital you need to have access to do a renovation and flip? I know it depends, but ballpark.
It used to kind of figure 5K per thing. So if you're doing windows, 5K. If you're doing a roof, 5 to 6K. Foundation, if you're not really sure, maybe add 5 to 6K. For the big ticket deals, that's probably creeped up to about 7 on those things right now. Maybe not quite foundation. And then again, from being in construction since 06, we figure a bathroom is going to cost about what a bathroom costs. A kitchen is going to cost about what a kitchen costs. So the variables then become just the size of the flooring, the size of the kitchen, um, and then obviously the finish out. If we stay below the 400K price range in DFW, we replicate the finish out pretty consistently, where we're using the same tile, the same paint, the same flooring in the properties. If we're going to creep up above 400K, then we're going to go a little more customized, and we're going to add some to the budget based on what the kind of not the seller, based on kind of what the buyer profile and buyer demographic is likely to be for that property.
Okay. What's the kind of the allocation between below and above a 400K threshold?
Oh, well, it's kind of median home price right now in North Texas, I guess, 384, something like that, somewhere in there. I'm not sure. So it's not quite so much an allocation. I mean, we're putting LVP, for example, even in like, probably not up to 5, but above 4, LVP is good. So it's a fluid kind of thing. It kind of depends. We definitely always repair to what the comps are to justify the exit price. So where people get into trouble is if they have my budget's 35K, but legitimately if the house needs 50K to get to where it needs to sell, cutting corners might make it so it doesn't appraise, it doesn't get there. And as we enter this new marketplace, I think we're going to see more and more of that. And I think we are seeing it on the retail side, where we're not seeing obviously price decreases from where things should sell at, but we're seeing price decreases when people are just like shooting for numbers that don't make any sense. We'd rather, in our business model, we'd rather price here, even if we think it'll sell here, so that we can bid up to here. Because if we price it here, we're more likely to sell actually down here. And that becomes a lot more, I think it becomes a lot more important of a strategy as the market softens a little bit going into kind of Q3 and Q4 this year, which I think everyone thinks is going to soften a little bit. It's not going to crash and be crazy, but you got to be a little more strategic with our pricing.
Okay. Interesting. And you said like above 4 LVP. What does that mean?
Oh yeah. So LVP, it's like 5 years ago, it's a shit product, luxury vinyl plank, and calling it luxury 5 years ago was, I mean, I'll be honest, it was a freaking lie. But it's basically an interlocking free floating floor that goes over the slab or subfloor, depending on what you have. Needs very little. Some of it even has pad like built in, so you don't need pad, don't need vapor barrier, and it's a vinyl product that is super durable. It can scratch, but it's really durable and it's waterproof. So it's way superior to the MDF, free floating. What's it called? Click in shit. Installs the same kind of way, so it still installs in like a click in fashion, but it's just a lot more durable. The only time we can really deviate from that is if we're going to go higher end. Then we'll still do a glue down like engineered wood floor, and if the comps really justify it, we'll do a nail down hardwood floor with like a 3 or 4 inch oak, depending on what the neighborhood is. So used to be we put in what the click in stuff, the MDF based stuff, pretty much up to like 250 ish, and then we'd have to go directly to like a glue down hardwood for above that. And now with LVP, it's just come such a long way in terms of quality. We're definitely putting that into. We got one listing actually next week, 390. It's going to go probably over 4, and it's LVP, the same stuff we put in their 200K houses, like the same exact product.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I got LVP in my house actually. It's nice. It looks like gray wood grain.
Yeah,
have a pattern. So yeah, good stuff. I just wasn't sure if it was related to something else, so that's why I thought I'd ask.
No problem.
All right, nice. So on average, how many deals are y'all doing in your business per month?
Since we flip, it's a variable number because we'll have a couple wholesales, we'll have a couple flips. Right now on the board, I think there's 23 or 24 deals. Out of those, there's 5 or 6 that we're keeping for rentals. There's wholesales that kind of come in and come off, 3 or 4 wholesales that work through the process. And then the rest of them are flips. We're actually doing 2 big burnouts that they're inside of our wheelhouse, but they're going to be longer term projects. And the ARV is going to be in excess of $1 million. We got them for the price. So those are going to be on the board for a while.
Okay. But you don't have like a number when you're projecting your financial goals and saying like, for this year, we need to hit X number of deals that equates to this many deals per month. Do you ever do anything like that?
Yeah, sort of. So our long-term goal, which is a wish list goal, is we want to build a portfolio of rentals because we still think the rental market, especially in single family, is fantastic. And the interest rates are still historically relatively low, and the access to like takeout financing it's been better like a year and a half ago, but prior to that, it's really never been better than it is now. So our like wish list goal is 3,000 rental units inside of 10 years, which sounds aggressive because it is. And then we backtrack from there. What we're gonna have to do a year, obviously, it's gonna be a deal a day each year, and we're not quite there yet, but we're probably at about we're at about 3 deals a week. So it's kind of it's going the right way. The next key is obviously to increase our marketing and manage our cash flow.
Okay, nice. And I've been thinking I've been learning a lot more about like short-term rentals and stuff. So are y'all considering that, like just Airbnb some of those out, or primarily 12-month long-term lease, or what's your split, you think?
Yeah, a good mix. I know a lot of folks in the short-term rental space that do pretty well. We have 2 in McKinney that were actually pretty close to downtown. So we're turning those into short-term rentals. And I haven't done one, so I'm not the best guy to ask about that, but we're going to give it a shot. I think a lot of the risks are understated that people talk about with like getting banned or getting like just turnover or trashed or whatever. But at the same time, I think they're a good added part of the portfolio. I would be hesitant to want to do it like as a full-time thing because now you're in a hospitality business versus a real estate business, and I like real estate, but we're adding them in.
Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, I think we've hit on most of these questions that I wanted to hit on. Oh yeah, I know that you had managed over like 200 multifamily units, but it seems like you kind of transitioned away from that. And I know you did some self-storage, and so I'm just curious why focus only on the single family space right now, and like how do they all compare to each other?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my multifamily experience goes back to kind of 2006. My first deal was at 112 units I found on Craigslist. It was a good deal fundamentally, and especially to buy it for the price we bought it at, it would be great now. We bought it for $860,000, capitalized the crap out of it, and our exit price at the time was about 33,000 a unit. So it's about 3.7 million, something like that, I think. Which now in this market sounds kind of crazy. My second deal, because I like doing stupid shit twice to prove to me that it was a bad idea, was 98 units. It was already relatively stabilized, and it was at 13,000 units. So I bought it almost half price, which is pretty cool. Like I said, the problem with that is 2008 was right around the corner, and we ended up losing about $3 million between those 2 deals, and that's not fun. So we've done a couple like small multifamily since then, and we've done a couple of we had a 9-plex in San Diego we did way back in the day. But what I like about multifamily is if you do it right, and we did it right except for the market being not exactly on our side, you can obviously scale your money a lot faster. What we don't like about it is it's definitely a less liquid asset than a house. Because if we'd had 200, 300 units, 2006, 7, 8, back then, would have been fine, wouldn't have lost money. And I'm the only guy I know that gets up in front of 50 or 200 people and fesses up to having my first deal be a colossal failure. And I guess looking back at it, we knew when we moved to Texas that there was probably a good opportunity in that space. We just didn't feel like jumping into it at that time. And that's probably a missed opportunity on my part. Part of it was actually when my wife and I moved out here, I broke my back in a rock climbing accident, which might or might not be on my profile. So spent like months in the hospital and kind of rehabbing. And it just kind of tweaked my mindset where I wasn't in the mindset of like, let's go be super aggressive in the market and do all this stuff, which was 8 years ago, prime time to do it. Should have been hitting the gas as hard as we could. But that kind of is what it is. In this market right now, I don't want to talk poorly of anyone doing multifamily because I think there's a lot of people doing it right. The problem is it's a different business model than doing a high volume residential model that we're doing. And I think a lot of people, I don't really understand how you can have an exit interest rate above your cap rate and not have either. You got to either be factoring in massive rent inflation, which I think is very speculative, or I think you're probably not buying as well as you should. And we're not at that pivotal moment right now. But a lot of the deals that I see that come in that just other wholesalers send us, I look at the numbers like, I don't know, at a loan, you're already losing money. And if it's got 20% upside, I don't want to be into a deal that's value add that's maybe a 6.5 cap. It's just like, it doesn't make sense to me. I can do houses that make a lot more money with multiple exit strategies in a more liquid market. So that's my preference. Probably, like I said, I probably missed the window that I really should have hit 5 or 6 years ago. Self-storage, different issue. That's more of an accident. We bought one a year and a half ago because we were cold calling the crap out of absentee landlords, and he happened to have a self-storage deal that he wanted to let go for a really good price. So we bought it for 170. Cleaned out some of the meth heads. Probably didn't clean out all of them. Got tired of dealing with it because, and we knew it going in. Problem with self-storage on a small scale is it becomes difficult to manage. It's not really feasible to hire an outside management company for something like 100 units like ours was. It's like 93 or something like that. Because how hard are they going to fight to like 10% of $75 for some deadbeat? Like they're not gonna. And if it's out of town for us, this is in Longview, which is 2.5 hours east of here, more or less, I think. It's just difficult for us to manage in-house. So it's kind of a mom and pop kind of deal. Anyway, but bought it for 170, cash flowed it, more or less for about a year, sold it for 350 or something, I think. So for that kind of payday, we're like, screw it. So now I'm jaded because that was obviously a fantastic deal. So now when I see other people send us self-storage deals, I'm like, I'll buy it based on the numbers I bought that other one at. But that's a case of, I think you really need to have probably, I don't know, 100,000 gross square foot rentable or whatever to justify it. And we're like, whatever 100 units is that aren't that big. It's just, you really need to focus on it to scale it and like do that business. And we're really good at the house business. So we kind of like staying on our lane.
All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I just ask because I know that a lot of folks might start out in the single family space and then transition and evolve into multifamily or other.
Yeah, I did it backwards.
Stuff. Yeah,
I did it backwards.
Nice. All right. That makes a lot of sense, though. That's the same reason that I've done land for a while and plan to continue doing land is because the returns are pretty good and you can do a lot of creative stuff with it, especially as you get into larger parcels like 50, 100 acres, and you can split them and change rezone them and all this other stuff. So
we would probably jump into that space before doing like buying a B- or C multifamily property. We have a lot of friends in the land space, and obviously there's a ton of money in it. So and it's more in our wheelhouse. It's more of a transactional business process, whereas something like a large multifamily is a single asset transitional process to get the asset performing to where you want to, and then have whatever exit strategy. Whereas land fundamentally is a lot like a house. Hey, what can I do with this thing? What's my exit on the back end? What's my secondary backup exit if I miss that one? And then how do I manage my risk along the way?
Yeah, definitely. I think that again, it just comes down to it is obviously a lot more work because you have to keep turning that wheel. But if you're not the one actually turning it, then obviously it's easier. You have to have a team in place. Otherwise, personally, I get depressed and burn out if I'm just the only one doing it. And it's like, that sucks. It's like the entire business comes to a standstill because Mason doesn't feel good that day. So it's not the way to run a business,
No, to be honest, that's the only reason I built a team. It wasn't for the more money, because if you're doing strictly a wholesale business, you have to roughly triple your wholesale volume to justify bringing on a team. That's just kind of the way the math works. By the time you add overhead and expenses for what do you call it, commissions, that shit. Yeah, when you're paying these guys, so you have to pretty much triple your volume if you're just doing wholesale. So it wasn't so much about the money. It was about, man, talking to these sellers is really bumming me out. I don't want to hear their stories. Like, I don't want to be an uncompassionate guy, but it's like, I've heard the story 30 times in the past month. I'm getting bummed out. I'm going to pay someone to hear that story for me and let them deal with it. And it turns out everyone says, they're going to perform 75% as well as you are. That's true, but they're going to perform 75% as well as you do 100% of the time, where you're performing 100% as well as you do about 60% of the time because of what you just mentioned. You can burn out because you're working by yourself. So your productivity, strangely enough, actually tends to go up when you hire a team out.
Yeah, definitely. And a good book, just one quote from it, Mike McAlowitz's Clockwork. He talks about, you might be able to earn $100 per hour working on your own, but if you could figure out how to get someone where maybe after you pay that person, you're only making $5 an hour, but you can do that an infinite number of times, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
And you're trading one headache for another. If you don't like the business development, you don't like the people aspect of having a team in place, then I totally get the doing it yourself mindset too. But if you want to have the transition to that, there's ways that can make it really kind of fun. It's honestly, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, like I don't have my wife is the only business partner, but she's like a silent partner in the business. And she just tells me, let me know when you deposit a check in the bank account. Kind of thing. So, and it's actually worked out better for our dynamic relationship, whatever. But I just say all that because just having a new virtual assistant start with me, I feel like it's almost like a business partner, keep me motivated. And he's like, no, man, I agree, Mason. Let's just keep sending out more and more texts. And I want to get more signed contracts for you. Let's just do this, make some money. I'm like, yeah, that's the motivation I needed because I can't do that. I can't motivate myself all the time because I can only look at the writing on my whiteboard and the quotes only so many times a day.
Being responsible, it's because obviously we have overhead and all that and payroll, but being responsible for someone else's livelihood, it's definitely a challenge, but it can be super rewarding as long as you have the right team. Now, if you have a toxic team and bad sales guys and all that stuff, I mean, everyone bumps into that once in a while, and that can drag down the entire team. But if you focus on their success as being part of your success, it sounds cliche, it sounds stupid until you do it, and it's like, oh, it's actually really fulfilling, huh? Now I trade one stress for another stress, but it's the same as moving out to Texas 10 years ago. Like, well, if it sucks, get rid of them. Go back to what you were doing before. Anyhow, it's not that big a deal. Not that you want to just fire people for the sake of it, but if you try it out and you don't like it, there's nothing wrong with backtracking a little bit and reevaluating your priorities.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've done a lot. I've gone through a lot of different VAs, and part of it I felt like the common denominator is me, and I probably need to improve my screening process and training process and other stuff like that.
VAs are always, there's a lot
hit
of
or miss anyway, though.
Yeah, exactly. I know some of the big guys that own the VA companies say they'll go through, they'll hire 10 and keep one, and that's a lot of work. That's almost a separate company by itself. But it works well.
So, is your team primarily just U.S. based folks, or do you use a mix of some overseas VAs, or how's your team structured?
Right now, since we're not doing cold calling heavily, it's all in-house in the office. So we have, I guess we just brought on, we got like 8 people in there. In-house. Last year, we did a lot of cold calling. So we did a lot of VAs. I think we ran 4 at a time for quite a while. And again, it's just a model that kind of burned us out in the residential field, especially competing with everyone else that's fundamentally better at cold calling than we are. And we're fundamentally better at PPC and networking than honestly pretty much anyone out there. So it's more beneficial for us to focus on that.
Okay, nice. And where's your office located? Just curious.
Yeah, North Dallas, technically Farmers Branch. So probably about 15 minutes from you. We'll get lunch on Beltline sometime and hang out.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds good. I know exactly what you're talking about. So it's cool. Yeah. Yeah, the good thing about Richardson, you can be at Dallas very quickly.
Yeah, it's nice and central.
Yeah. Yeah, not too bad. All right. Yeah, we'll have to do that sometime. Well, I think that I have hit on most of my questions, but I do know that I earlier mentioned your founder of this Platinum Real Estate Mastermind. Why don't you talk about that a little bit and what folks could expect if they wanted to learn more about that?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. So we have a private group where we meet 4 times a year in person. Right now we're doing it in Dallas, and we do weekly calls via Zoom. Whoever wants to be on them or whatever. And we alternate between 1 week we'll do a mastermind call where we just stay on as long as we need to and answer questions. Sometimes a guy will be on, they'll have questions about how to burr, how to get their money back out, whatever. We'll just talk about it. We'll just go around the room, and anyone that wants to either contribute or has a question about optimizing their business, we'll help them out. And then the alternating week, we'll do a topic. So we did a really good topic on business development from a needs-based perspective. probably earlier in the year that took a couple weeks to kind of burn through. Right now, we're doing a good sequence on sub twos because we all believe they're going to be fantastic acquisition strategies in the kind of shifting market that we're going to experience in the next, like I said, Q3, Q4, and probably for most of next year. So we're going to really dial in and talk about sub twos and offering seller financing, which my buddy Tony has done a shit ton of. He's done like a crap ton of these things. So he's going to be taking lead on that. And then the in-person aspect of it is fantastic. It's mastermind style with a couple of, we'll do a presentation on the market update with like inventory and all that stuff. But it's a chance for everyone to just really highlight their business, sit down in person. We go to fancy ass dinners, spend a lot of money. It doesn't make as much, but it's a lot of fun. And everyone gets to have 20, 30 minutes to talk about their business, talk about their strengths, their weaknesses, their struggles, and then asks for like feedback from the rest of the room. It's a lot. Honestly, it's a lot of fun. We enjoy doing it. It's a good aspect of the business that we like. And if anyone's interested in that, just hit me up. I'm all over Facebook, easy to find, TJ Kosen, all that. So that's super easy to.
Okay. Yeah, that was my next question. I wasn't sure there's like a website that you go to, or just need to ping you and then you could send them more information.
Yeah, hit me up. We're building out the landing page because it's more of a hobby than a big revenue generator for us. But we like doing it, and we get a lot of seeing their success is obviously it's fun. It's fun helping other people be successful. Our website right now actually is reiaf.com. AF means acquisition funnel for anyone who wants to be all like, what's AF stand for? But so real estate investing as fuck is the website, and yeah, there's all kinds of information on there for folks. And I think my personal website redirects to that, so tjkosen.com should redirect that as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll put all that in the show notes as well. I think this has all been really helpful. Is there anything else you want to hit on?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity. I didn't know we were so close. Thanks so much for your patience. I apologize for flying out real quick, but no, I had a great time. That was a fun conversation for sure.
Perfect. Yeah, no worries. Things come up, so I'm glad we were able to make this happen. So thanks for taking the time.
Perfect. Well, hit me up. Let's get some lunch.
All right, perfect. Talk to you later.
Awesome. Later, man.
All right, that's another episode of Scalable Real Estate Investing. Thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to leave a review and subscribe on whatever channel you're using to listen or watch these episodes. And also be sure to go to scalablerealestateinvesting.com, scroll to the bottom, and fill out the form to sign up for our email. And you could also reach me directly at mason@scalablerealestateinvesting.com. That's MASON at scalablerealestateinvesting.com. If you'd like to get in touch with me to either partner on deals or even be considered to do your own episode on this podcast. Thanks again, and have a great day.